It's time for a look into our favorite rubbery pirate, Luffy, and his many tricks and power-ups to survive the dangerous oceans. This is Luffy's different gears explained. Gear 1. Now, this is what we in the business call a classic. Gear 1 is essentially a base form of Luffy. It's the regular, lovable, rubbery straw hat pirate we've all come to watch. Technically, there is no official announcement of Gear 1, but most consider it as the unofficial description of the basic rubbery powers that Luffy uses from the beginning. It's in this form we see the classic techniques like Gum Gum Pistol, Bazooka, Balloon, and so on. So we are going to see how these iconic moves mesh with the new gears Luffy has in store for us. Gear 2. Despite the name, Gear 2 is actually the first of his transformations. First seen in Ain's lobby, Gear 2 was a pretty popular form back in the day, and fans were hyped at the sight of Luffy's reddish skin and steam that just kept pouring out of him. No fancy lighting, none of that stuff. The logic behind this form is that Luffy speeds up his blood flow across the body, making him move faster and hit harder. He can survive the pressure thanks to his Devil Fruit's rubber-like nature. Now, in the pre-time skip arcs, there were a lot of drawbacks. Firstly, he needed to start it by striking a pose that pumps blood from his legs to the rest of the body. Secondly, he can't use this form for long. Gear 2 saps his nutrients at a rapid level, and using it for too long could risk damaging his lifespan. At the time skip, Luffy basically mastered the technique and instead uses short bursts of Gear 2 in individual body parts, minimizing the danger. When he combines the technique with Haki, we get the infamous Red Hawk attack, a sweet homage to the best boy of the series, Ace. As for its viability, we see Gear 2 being used pretty often across the anime and manga. It's always the first thing Luffy uses against anyone that lasts longer than 5 seconds. Like how he managed to take down a pacifista, which is very much not an everyday achievement. Gear 3. For the inflation lovers out there, Oda has blessed them with the introduction of Gear 3. Also shown during the Ain's Lobby arc, Gear 3 is a technique that expands Luffy's body part to massive levels, letting him smash away anything in his path. Now, there is a key difference between Gear 3 and his balloon technique. On a technical level, the balloon technique only expands his body by taking in air from the mouth, making him soft overall. Gear 3 is activated by Luffy blowing hard into his thumb and expanding his bones. Now, I know he is technically rubber at this point, but that explanation is weird and honestly dumb, so let's leave it at this. Balloon is soft, and Gear 3 is hard. Pre-time skip, Gear 3 had a lot of risks and drawbacks for Luffy. He couldn't move as well thanks to the disproportionate weight, so using it against someone with speed is a bad idea. Besides that, he can only deactivate Gear 3 by just exhaling really hard. The problem was that it also led to a mini Luffy, and he stayed that way depending on how long he was using Gear 3. Of course, a lot of these drawbacks were gone after the time skip. Luffy can now properly control where the air goes, leading to only part of his limb being expanded, letting him keep his stretching powers and speed. He's also able to expand multiple parts of his body and combine the use of Haki to create the elephant Gatling attack, and it's just as powerful as it sounds. Also, the whole bit about turning chibi, don't worry about it, it's not a thing anymore. Despite my apprehension about the mechanics of Gear 3, I have a certain love for it. It's super reminiscent of those early Popeye cartoons, from the massive arm size to the crazy strength. I feel like Oda must have had some influence from those shows, and it keeps the idea that Luffy is just a silly guy at his core. It was also the first hint at the true nature of Luffy's ability. So guys, if you want to keep getting exciting content like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Gear 4. Now, this is the form that everyone knows means business. It's essentially a combination of the previous two gears to create a form that has the speed of Gear 2 and the devastating power of 3. Speaking of Gear 3, Luffy also activates this form by blowing air into his arms, and he has to keep doing that or risk deflating. In terms of looks, it's kind of weird. Luffy expands most of his upper body, coating his arms, legs, and part of his torso. He's also constantly steaming like with Gear 2. In terms of capability, it's a pure powerhouse, exceeding anything Luffy can do with Gears 2 or 3, and has a versatility that lets him have different variations of Gear 4, each emphasizing a different fighting style. The first Gear 4 form would be the Boundman. The usual size and Haki coating, but the unique bit is that he can't stay still when using it. Instead, he's constantly bouncing on the spot, even in the air. It also allows him to use the attack Python, which can alter the direction of the attack as it's going. This is a form that emphasizes speed above all else, to the point that Luffy can't always maintain control, especially if he's on the ground. The second form is Tankman, and as the name applies, it's all about defense, blocking blows that would have damaged any of his other forms. The downside is that that's all it brings to the table. It's also rarely used in general. The final of these forms would be the most impressive too, Snake Man. Unlike the other forms, Luffy's arms are only slightly expanded, and the haki is limited to his arms and legs, and he does get a sick-looking hairstyle though. What makes this form special is the evolution of the Python attack, where Luffy can change the direction of his attack. Moreover, the longer the attack goes on, the stronger it becomes, as the speed and impact only increases with each direction change. The form essentially leaves him a glass cannon, as he sacrifices defense for that extra power. In terms of flaws, they all have the same one, which is that they burn bright and fast. Luffy can't maintain Gear 4 for long, and he has no idea when he can use it. Afterwards, he also can't use haki for about 10 minutes, leaving him very vulnerable. Now, personally, I find the form to be just fine. I'm not hating it, but I'm not over the moon about it either. It brings a lot of unique ideas to the table, but it also loses a lot of charm and silliness that makes Luffy so endearing. Thankfully, there is another form out there that keeps to these very wishes, and it's also the one I'm sure you've all been waiting for. Gear 5. The newest form with the biggest discourse, Gear 5 was introduced in the Wano arc, and it changed the nature of Luffy's Devil Fruit forevermore. Looks-wise, it's the most unique yet, keeping Luffy's size the same, but turning his hair and clothes a stark white, his eyes red, and surrounding his neck with a white cloud. We can only catch a brief glimpse of this form, but its powers are through the roof. His physical capabilities are heightened, but it also provides him the ability to apply his rubbernation to the environment as well. Furthermore, he seems to be essentially invincible in this new form, taking a blast from Kaido without any real damage. There's a lot of lore and history behind what this means, but essentially, Luffy actually awakened his supposedly paramecia fruit, which is actually a mythical Zoan, and finally unlocked the power of Nika, a sun god. There's a bunch more to this, but basically, he's become a Looney Tunes character in the best way possible. From his reactions to his fighting, Nika emphasizes having fun and messing with his opponents. It is considered to be a being of freedom and joy, and is acknowledged as the most ridiculous power in the world. I personally love this development simply because I feel like it captures the heart of what makes Monkey D. Luffy so appealing, giving a fresh breath to the story and promising greater surprises to come. And that concludes our little trip down the many gears of Monkey D. Luffy. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us. Don't forget to check out our next video and subscribe. It means a lot to us.